Well, welcome everybody to episode 2 of Controlled Chaos. I'm Jason Lederfine, a U.S. Army combat veteran and the current chief operating officer for Cage Fury Fighting Championships. Live on UFC Fight Pass, this week's guest will be your boy, Eryk Anders. So we're excited to have him on, a 20-fight UFC veteran. Last week we had former Strikeforce champion King Mo on, who had a lot of great things to say about his career and how he came from being a poor kid moving around with his mom and became a world champion, got interested in wrestling. So I think one of the biggest takeaways was that football coach came in and told him, you want to be better at football? Get out to the wrestling room. He went to the wrestling room the next morning, and he hasn't been outside of it since. So coaches, if you have the opportunity to visit the football team, invite those guys in. You never know, you might find the next King Mo. So it's the opportunity for you. But we've got some exciting stuff coming up with CFFC as well. The Thrill on the Hill next Friday, Liberty Hill at the Union League. It's going to be pretty exciting. We've got championship fights with Memphis's Kevin Peace trying to take the belt from current CFFC lightweight champion Will Starks. Will Starks, just a phenomenal athlete and so well-rounded. Came in and absolutely dominated when he fought for the CFFC lightweight championship just a few months ago, and he's already back ready to defend it against an undefeated, hungry, well-trained fighter in Kevin Peace. Kevin, actually the former CFFC welterweight champion of the world, and is now dropping down to lightweight to really make a run for the UFC, something I think both of those guys can potentially be in. And this fight will probably be the deciding factor if one of those guys does get picked up. It's going to be exciting. It's going to be live on UFC Fight Pass at Liberty Hill, the Union League, right outside of Philadelphia. What an amazing event. It's going to be capped off with a fireworks display for the 250th anniversary of our country. The Union League, a very patriotic organization that has put a lot behind this card, and we're very excited about having it and doing it. So let's show you a little promo video about the upcoming Thrill on the Hill.
Patriotic society where love of country leads is proud to come together at Union League Liberty Hill to celebrate our nation's 250th birthday in a very special way. In partnership with Cage Fury Fighting Championships, a company with a long history of special events, from shows at our nation's largest military base to a barn in the mountains of the Rockies, they're not shy to try something bold. CFFC embraces a rich tradition of developing some of combat sports' most storied athletes and champions. The road to the top is long and winding, and it all starts here.
The future champion.
On Friday, May 29th, that road to the top passes through Union League Liberty Hill. One night of fights to make history and celebrate our nation's anniversary while we raise money for two incredible charities. This is The Thrill on the Hill.
So the thrill on the hill, as you saw the highlight video, some other names to note. We're going to have a flyweight interim title fight with Ben Coyle and Mo Shialati, two absolute studs and killers. As you know, our current flyweight champion has been called up to the Contender Series, so we're really looking forward to him making a statement this summer when he fights on the Contender Series. So we've got a lot of great things, a lot of big things happening with CFFC and just MMA in general. We saw some big cards this weekend. We've seen some names come up, and we saw the announcement of Conor McGregor fighting Max Holloway. Don't know how everybody feels about that. I don't know if you think it's going to happen, if it's not going to happen, if Conor's going to beat Max again, if Max has just gotten too good. That's hopefully going to be answered coming up pretty soon. International Fight Week, as Conor McGregor is going to be in the main event against Max Holloway. That's definitely pretty big news in the MMA community. We've been waiting for Conor for a long time to come back. So we'll see if it actually happens. And if it does, I anticipate that being another amazing fight. Let's talk about next week. I should say later this week. We've got another show lined up for you this week. We will have our broadcasting buddy, Mr. Shane Sparks. Shane is a mainstay as a wrestling broadcaster, one of the best there is on ESPN, on the Big Ten Network, Flow Sports. You name it, he's on it. He's also an analyst for the NCAAs, the selection show. He does a lot for the sport of wrestling. And if you've ever seen him, heard him, you know about his passion, his excitement, what he brings to the table. And I've had the opportunity to sit in cars with him for hours and hours and hours on road trips during match day events and hear what he has to say and just his story, which I think has been absolutely amazing. I think you'll be impressed. I'm sure there's a lot of people in the wrestling community and world that would love to ask him some questions. And this Friday is going to be your chance, May 22nd. We're going back to our original 2 p.m. Central, 3 p.m. Eastern time this Friday, May 22nd. And we'll have Shane Sparks on. We've got some other pretty exciting people coming up, some Olympians, and we're working on some other guests. Eryk Anders is on the way to the studio now, getting the kids' class at the gym all ready and set up. We'll talk to him about that, about gym ownership. We're going to talk to him about his college and high school football days, his college days, obviously, at the University of Alabama, his 20-fight UFC career, and what he's done as a athlete with his money to set him up for financial success. I think this is something that a lot of younger fighters or even current fighters that are deep into their careers are going to want to hear. He's gotten advice from some big names like Nick Saban. He's remained very close with Nick, and Nick has been a big influence in his life. We're going to talk to him about that and about that relationship and how he went from trying out for the NFL, playing in Canada, to becoming a UFC athlete, a professional athlete in multiple sports, which we know is not easy to do. But he did it with 20 fights in the UFC. That's a career that most UFC fighters never see. He just retired just a couple, not even a month or so ago. He had his last fight against Brad Tavares and won a unanimous decision. I believe it was a really good fight. Good for him against another tough opponent. If you look down the line of who Eryk fought, how many short notice fights he took, you will see that he was never scared, always ready, always available. And folks, if you got questions, you got anything, you can go ahead and type questions we will get to them as we can during the show. You want to talk to Eryk and ask him anything about his career, please, you are more than welcome to do so. Get the questions coming and comments coming, and we will feed them to Eryk so he can get them answered to you directly. You'll hear it right from him. Doesn't matter if it's a football question, a finance question, a UFC question, an MMA question, a question about owning, operating, or starting your own gym. Something that Eryk is doing now in Birmingham. So he's got a lot of success. He's got a lot of investors and people behind him that have believed in him. But I can understand why, when you have such a long career in the UFC and you were so successful in college football, you can understand why people believe in Eryk Anders and why he's really made his own breaks. Nobody hands you anything in the sport of MMA. You've got to go out there and you've got to earn it. And Eryk did that for quite a long time in the UFC. I think he was probably in the UFC right around, 8, 9 years. Starting out fighting, for us as an amateur in V3 fights in Memphis and getting fights anywhere he could. Fought several professional fights for V3. We got him hooked up in Bellator, got a quick win in Bellator, and then he went on and he won the LFA middleweight world championship against a very tough, currently ranked stud in the UFC, Brandon Allen. So as you can see, Eryk has definitely excelled in what he does. He's competed on CFFC BJJ. I've actually helped match him up for a couple things, and he didn't even care who he was competing against. He said, I'll compete against anybody. There was a time he even wanted to compete against a UFC heavyweight. Said, I don't care. I don't care how big he is. I don't care what he comes in. I'm down. I'm good for it. So I think that says a lot about him, his character, and what you have to do to succeed in the business of MMA is you really do have to believe in yourself and be willing to take some really tough tests. Either you're ready for it or you're not. We see a lot of guys on the regional level trying to fight easy fights, trying to pad their records, and some of them make it to the UFC. And when they do, they're usually 1 or 2 and out. Their careers don't last long. So test yourself on the regional scene so that you know that when you get to the big leagues, you deserve to be there and you will remain there. I'd hate to see people that work so hard to get to the big leagues, spend all that time, money, energy to make 20 grand in 2 fights and be gone and your career's over and that's it. I want to see guys tested. I want to see guys take the fights they need to prove that they belong in the UFC. And that's really what CFFC does, is we don't believe in easy fights. Matter of fact, the more we like you and the more we think that you're going to make it, the harder of a fight we're going to give you, because we truly want to see that you are ready. Just a couple weeks ago, we saw a couple former champions in Pat Sabatini and Sean Brady with just absolute dominant wins in their fights. Sean Brady had multiple 10-8 rounds. He won 30-25 on 2 different scorecards. I don't know how it wasn't on the same on all 3 scorecards. He had an absolute excellent game plan from his coaches, Jonathan Webb, John Marquez, Dean Thomas. Those guys work with him all the time. They come up with just perfect game plans. But a game plan doesn't mean anything if the athlete doesn't follow it. But Sean Brady absolutely followed the game plan. Jonathan Webb was actually interviewed prior to the fight and said that our goal is we're going to take him down and we're going to do whatever we want to him. And his opponent, knowing that, still got taken down at will. And Sean Brady was just absolutely dominant the entire fight. It was a really, really good fight for Sean Brady to bounce back from. He's definitely still going to be a top 5 guy in the world right now. And I think with his coaches, with some healing up, he is going to be right back in that position to be the number 1 guy in the world to hopefully soon fight for a welterweight title. So as we wait, Eryk Anders is on the way. He'll be here any minute. So get your questions ready. Feel free to ask whatever you want. We've got Eryk here now, so we're going to go ahead and bring him in. Yeah, boy, Eryk Anders. Thank you for joining us. How you doing?
Yeah, I apologize for being a little late, but I guess with it being kids getting out of school this week and Memorial Day weekend, everybody's going to the beach all at the same time. So
no worries. We appreciate you having you on. I've been talking you up a little bit, but really, what we want for this show is I want people to know who Eryk Anders is. I want them to hear about you, your life, and things that they might not have ever heard about or known about before, even after following your 20 fight UFC career, not even your regional career. So early life, you're born in the Philippines. So you had family in the military. Tell me about that. What was it like?
yeah, my mom was a full bird colonel in the Air Force, so she was in for like 26 years or something like that. So we moved around about every 3 years. We lived in the Philippines, Albuquerque, New Mexico, Okinawa, Japan, Prattville, Alabama, Waldorf, Maryland, and then the summer going into my sophomore year of high school, we moved to San Antonio. And right after high school, I came out here to Alabama, and I've been here pretty much ever since.
So you started playing football in Texas in high school, or were you in multiple places?
No, I played football from like the age of 7 all the way to I was like 23 or 24 or something like that. Even when we lived in Japan, we lived on the American base, so a bunch of Americans were, living in close proximity. So they had like a YMCA, or the youth center is what they called it, where everybody played all their sports through there.
So I had King Mo on last week, and he was also playing football in Texas, where football in Texas is a religion. It's an institution. And we talked about the expense of, football compared to wrestling. And he told me back then that they had corporate sponsors for everything for football, that basically everything was covered for these guys. It was like playing at a college. Did you have the same experience?
Yeah, I don't think we had any like corporate sponsors, but if you take Friday Night Lights and Varsity Blues and mix those together, that's what football culture was like in Texas. The whole city shut out from like the country. I say San Antonio because no one's ever heard of Spring Branch, but it's kind of in between New Braunfels and San Antonio. So it was like it's grown up quite a bit since then, but back then it was like a one-stop light kind of thing right off the highway. So the whole town shuts down. We have like 10,000 people at just a regular football game. We play. Then immediately after that, we go to somebody's property, as they call it. Everybody has those big ranches out there. Make a bonfire. Everybody backs their truck up, and party a little bit afterwards.
So who recruited you out of high school to play college football?
I had offers from Ole Miss, Memphis, Texas Tech, and Alabama. And obviously the SEC, especially back then, was the most dominant conference in the nation. So I was going to go to Ole Miss.
It's fair to say it still is. Fair to say it still is, really,
Man, I think with the NIL and all these like conferences merging together and whatnot, I think the balance is kind of shifting a little bit, making it more of an even playing field. I was
so ultimately chose Alabama. What was the driving factor to choose that?
Well, I wanted to play in the SEC. Ole Miss came first, so I was going to go to Ole Miss, but there's just something about Ole Miss and them being the Rebels and and their fight song is "The South Shall Rise Again," and then like their mascot is the little plantation owner sitting on the cane or whatever. Dude, I was like, whatever, I'll go. And then also it's Mississippi. Dude, I can't even say Mississippi without feeling a little bit racist inside, you know? And then Alabama came. I just feel like they were a little bit more progressive. And, I loved Ed Ogeron, though. You know, he was like really a big driving force for getting me to go to Ole Miss. But ultimately, Alabama came and, you know, I just liked Tuscaloosa better than Oxford.
The culture at Alabama, what was expected of a football athlete on their team? What was expected of you on a day-to-day basis?
Well, you know, that's kind of when Shula was there, to be honest, not a whole lot. You know, we had like days off from practice. You know, they weren't winning like they are now. The culture was just a little bit different. When Saban came, you know, we were expected to go to class. You know, we were expected to pass drug tests. Um, like all the rules were enforced, and Saban's whole thing was how you do one thing is how you do everything. So if he can't even trust you to get up and go to class, how can he trust you on 3rd and long to catch the ball or make the right read or make a tackle and whatnot? And, you know, that's certainly something that I kind of adopted into my life as an adult. You know, I try to do everything the right way now. And when I started doing that, you know, my life kind of skyrocketed.
Now, over the years, you have stayed pretty close and in contact with Coach Saban. How has that relationship developed over the past, 15 years?
Oh, it's great. He's the man. You know, he is, you know, basically the president of the state of Alabama. So, you know, his word is law. Um, he's just a great guy. You know, he does a good job. I don't know how he does it, but like he has kind of like this personal relationship with all his players and the players that came and went. And even now, you know, he's living like his best life. You know, he doesn't have to coach. He just talks about football one day a week on game day, and you know, the rest of the time he's on his boat in Florida or doing whatever he wants.
We've noticed, and I've seen it over the years, that a football head coach can completely in college completely change the dynamic of a team. Can take them from zero to hero really quickly. We saw it with Saban. We've seen it with a lot of guys where they get into a struggling program or a program that's just not quite there and taking them over the hump. What are some of the things besides the disciplinary and structure that Saban did to really make Alabama this absolute powerhouse?
One, he was an excellent recruiter. And even some of the coaches he had on the coaching staff weren't there necessarily to coach. I mean, obviously they do have the coach, but they were great recruiters. So he had guys like that. And then, you know, he just demanded discipline and excellence in everything. I don't know how he would do it, but like he's a defensive coach, so we're doing defensive stuff over here with the scout team, and he'll see like the receiver run the wrong route over here, and they're on like a totally different field than we are. So he'd go over there, yell at them, and while he's yelling at them, the defense is still going, and he'll come back and be like, "Hey, it's cover 2. You're supposed to do that." I'm like, man, it's like this guy had eyes in the back of his head, or you know, maybe he had an earpiece and somebody was telling him. You know, I don't know how he did it, but he was just a master of getting everybody on the same page, and he built like this culture of camaraderie. And you know, they used to haze us, the freshmen. He stopped that. He also created an atmosphere of competition. That just because you're the starter week 1 doesn't mean you're going to be the starter week 2. So the starting rotation would change almost weekly based on how you practice and whatnot. So if I'm competing against, you know, if I know my job's not safe and the guy behind me can take my spot, you know, I'm busting my ass every day in practice. I'm doing everything. I'm even doing extra stuff to make sure I stay ahead of the curve so I can have my spot for next week.
Well, I think on a team that good, you have multiple All-Americans behind you, to where if one guy comes out, you've got another All-American that could fill in, and he's waiting to fill in. So it
Yeah.
does bring that sense of you've got to play your ass off the entire time, and also the discipline portion of it, so that you don't get benched.
Well, also, the guy across the ball from you is an All-American as well. So you're getting, not only are you keeping the guy from behind you from taking your spot, but you're competing with it with a first round draft pick on the other side of the ball, every day in practice. So how could you not get better?
So up into this point, you're playing football at Alabama. You win a national championship. Had you stepped foot in an MMA gym or wrestled or done anything prior to that?
I have JV level experience in high school. When we moved from Maryland to Texas, they didn't have wrestling in my high school, so I didn't wrestle past my freshman year of high school. So that's it. I never, I've been in growing up, plenty of, street fights or fights in the backyard over a basketball game or something like that, but never trained to actually fight.
So it's a pretty difficult transition. You had gotten drafted in the NFL. You ended up playing a little bit in Canada. Is that right?
Yeah, I got picked up by Cleveland, got cut during camp, went to Canada, got cut. They can only keep like 6 Americans on every team, so that was just a numbers game. I played a year of arena football, and it was just like, if it's not the NFL, then I'm gonna keep it moving and find something else to do.
So how old were you when you first walked into an MMA gym?
I was about 24. I was just kind of like fed up with life. I was working like these odd jobs, and I just wasn't fulfilled. And I was getting in fights in bars and stuff like that. And I just kind of thought to myself, I need a better way to blow off steam instead of self-destructing, kind of like I was. So I walked into a gym, did some jujitsu. Because it was pretty close to wrestling. I didn't know anything about jiu-jitsu, but I figured it's the closest thing I can get to wrestling. I can still compete, and I can choke people out. And I saw some guys sparring in the corner, and I was like, I could do that. Then I ran across Walt Harris, sparred with him one time. He beat me up in the absolute nicest way possible. Like, he really could have hurt me because he had been training. He was way bigger, way faster, way stronger, all the things. But I just realized that I knew nothing. But it really turned me on to the sport because I was like, man, this could be something I can put all my time, effort, and energy into, and maybe I can get really good at it.
Well, I mean, we see now guys that are 24, they've got 15 fights under their belt. They're black belts in jiu-jitsu. They've got, Division I college wrestling experience, and they're breaking into the UFC that way. So to start at 24 is obviously very difficult to do. It's drinking through a fire hydrant trying to get all that information in. You primarily trained in Birmingham, right?
Yeah, Birmingham and Huntsville. I actually got my blue belt from a Seneca black belt named Suzanne Rabston up in Huntsville, where I was working at the time.
So you've enjoyed competing. You've been competing since you were a little kid. You started competing in jiu-jitsu as well. You've been a purple belt world champion. You've competed at CFFC BJJ. You're no stranger to competing. What is the drive for you to want to compete so often?
To me, that's what makes the training fun. I love training. Don't get me wrong, but I want the carrot at the end of the stick, so to speak. I want to train, get good, develop, and then go test that against some of the best in the world. So for me to train and not compete, that's not gonna work for me. I love training. I love jiu-jitsu. I love everything about MMA and jiu-jitsu and things like that. But I want to go test my skills and bring home some medals.
And you've done that. I've noticed a lot with your career. You started out, you fought a lot of amateur fights with V3. You were a V3 amateur champion. You fought for us as a pro. We got you, Rod Galvin got you on the Bellator card at the FedEx Forum. You had a quick win there. So you were competing a lot in this Mid-South area. You were really a well-known face around here. Then you fight for the LFA belt. And you fight a really, really tough guy. And I remember watching it. I mean, what was it on back then? Like Access TV or something?
Yeah.
I mean, I think I had to subscribe to it for that month just so I could watch the fight live. That was the only option. This was before Fight Pass. This was when we had a few streaming services, and that was it. We didn't have options like we do today. So I watched the fight. It was a 5-round fight. It's the first time I'd ever seen you go out of the first round. You win the fight. You had some possible injuries, but you get called up to the UFC right afterwards. What was that call like getting to the big leagues?
Well, they actually called twice. My hand was pretty swollen when they called the first time. And I was like, dude, I can barely make a fist, so I don't think it's a good idea to fight. And it kind of broke my heart a little bit because I was like, man, what if they don't call again? And my coach was like, dude, if you go out there and shit the bed, then, you can get cut. So me, my coach, my manager, we all agreed, man, listen, Jason House, my manager, assured me that, I would get another chance. So I was like, okay, let me get my hand healed. And then like 2 weeks later, they called again, and I was like, I don't care what you guys say. I'm taking this fight. It was like 10 days notice. And, dude, I was like 240 pounds. 240 pounds. And this is like less than a month after I had fought Brendan Allen. But I was like, dude, whatever. They're not going to call it third time. So I took the fight, cut all that weight to 185, showed up. And as soon as my foot touched the canvas of the UFC's cage, I felt how sticky it was. And it's textured, it's kind of rough a little bit. That's why you see all the guys with mat burn and stuff all over their knees. But I knew, because I was so used to fighting on like canvases where like one bead of sweat gets on there and it turns into a slip and slide. I knew as soon as,
an ice rink, they all turn into that,
Nah, it really does. But I get it, like the money's not there on the regional scene, so they need something that they can use over and over, and it's easy to clean and whatnot. But I knew as soon as I stepped one foot in the cage and I felt how grippy the mat was, and I'd really be able to sit down on my punches, I knew that I was going to win that fight without a shadow of a doubt. That was
a KO win, first one, right?
Yep, I knocked out Rafael Natal in like a little under 2.5 minutes in the first round.
And you went on a really solid run in the UFC, and just a few fights in, you're a main event in Brazil against a former champion. And here you are, where basically 95% of the media had picked you as the winner of that fight. And unfortunately, it was a split decision loss. How do you think you did?
I think I won the fight. I think I had opportunities to put him away, but maybe wrestled when I should have just, I'd rock him and then grab him, because he was like, Machida was so elusive. Like, he was really good with his footwork, and so when I'd have him rocked, I didn't want him to get away, so I tried to wrestle him a little bit, and I really wasn't that good at wrestling at the time. So maybe if I would have just stepped back and, picked my shots when I had him hurt, I'd have got him out of there anyways. But, wins and losses or whatever, but, what really stings is the one, that was my first loss, and two, I lost half my paycheck on a fight that, even myself, and I'm pretty honest with myself about my performances and whatnot, but I think that I won.
And that's what a lot of people really don't understand. I mean, I know Daniel Cormier has talked about it when he lost to John Jones, that he didn't just see it as the loss to John Jones. He saw it as losing $80,000 in his paycheck, because you get a show purse and a win purse. And a lot of people don't understand that in the sport. What that means is all athletes, they're given a guaranteed purse to take the fight and actually fight. And it usually doubles when they win. So if you lose, your paycheck is cut in half. And, if you're a guy making $12,000 and you lose the fight, that's a significant amount of money that you've just lost. And it's very difficult. And I think a lot of people don't really understand that dynamic in the sport.
Yeah, and what they don't understand is, you got to pay a manager, you got to pay your coach, you have travel expenses, and then the greediest one of them all is Uncle Sam. He for sure getting his cut.
Well,
So
and
he
you've
takes
been
the
a,
biggest chunk.
you've been a financial success. And one of the things that a lot of guys don't understand is the UFC pays you as a 1099 employee. So they just cut you a check.
Mhm.
It's up to you to file your taxes and pay that stuff.
Right.
And we see a lot of athletes get a performance bonus and get $100,000, and they buy a car and they go to the club and they waste it. And at the end of the year, the IRS says, "Hey, check it out, dude. You owe us like $40,000," and that money's gone.
Yeah.
Is that something you saw a lot in the sport?
I was able to like watch guys in the NFL and stuff do the same thing. I mean, have this dude make, $50 million and he doesn't have any money left. He's broke. And I was, obviously making way less than that. So, I've never been like a flashy person. I don't need to drive, a Lamborghini or nothing like that, or stay in like a 12-bedroom mansion or nothing like that. So, I just put my money into things that I felt would make me more money. So I bought, some real estate, some houses and whatnot. So, that money's already, this is just that's the equity in the houses alone is probably more money than I've made in half my fights in the UFC alone.
So that's really important. Something I've noticed, and we've talked about it before, where I would see after every fight, you've got keys to a new house. Almost every fight, it's like, wow, this guy's actually doing something smart. And we go back to Saban. Saban's giving you a lot of financial advice, right?
Well, to be honest, my ex-wife was like super like financially savvy. So, I'd win a fight and be like, "Yo, let's go somewhere," and she'd be like, "Yo, let's settle down and invest this money, and then we can go, later after the money starts making money, and with the rent and stuff that people pay from the houses, we can use that money to go on vacation or whatever." So she really schooled me to the game of, what to do with money and how money
And that's
works.
people don't usually have that person in their corner. They usually have their buddies in the corner saying, "Hey, let's go blow it. Let's go to Vegas. Let's go to
You
Hawaii. Let's
know,
go to
it,
Asia and party."
and I've definitely had that too, and I've definitely done that. But I was like in a way different place than I was at the beginning of my career.
So continuing to fight up to 39 years old. Most people at 35 are horribly out of shape. Their knees are bad. Their back hurts. They're in no place to do it, right? And at 39
Right.
years old, you're still fighting at a high level in the UFC against your last fight is against a very tough opponent, and you win the fight. How do you stay healthy during all these fight camps, 20 UFC fights? It's extremely hard to not get seriously injured and taken out for a long time. How did you stay healthy?
Well, to be honest, I didn't. I don't know a single fighter that fights at 100%. Something's always, training for a fight or just training in general is really rough on the body. You have to wrestle, you have to strike, you have to spar, you got to grapple, you have to do all the things. You can't neglect anything because eventually you're going to run across somebody who's good at what you're not. And if you haven't been training or practicing or drilling or doing anything, that's going to get exposed. So, um, to be honest, like my last 5 fights, I got dropped in every fight. I got knocked out in the one before my last one. So, one, I realized my chin isn't what it used to be. And two, I had a doctor tell me I needed knee replacement surgery, and it just like ached and hurt all the time. And I was just tired of it. So, that was uh, a leading factor into retiring. Turns out, he scoped my knee. He took out some bone spurs that was causing the pain and the inflammation and the swelling and stuff. So now, like, I could probably keep fighting. But, I bought the space. I bought the building. I put my gym in. The gym is making money. So, do I really need to do that and put my body through that? I don't. I got the houses. I got the gym. So, I love fighting. I thoroughly enjoyed it, but Father Time is undefeated.
And we've seen it, right? We just saw it this weekend. Junior Dos Santos, a former UFC champion who was, a dominant fighter, getting KO'd. We saw Nate Diaz get beat up. We saw, Gina Carrero she was once considered one of the best female fighters in the world, get submitted in 17 seconds. So like you said, it really is undefeated. But we've seen some guys like you, even DC, he was a heavyweight champion in his 40s. We see a guy like Yoel Romero, who I think he's probably 75 years old at this point, and the guy still runs a 440. I mean, it's just it's unbelievable. There are some genetic freaks out there, but at the end of the day, it really is a tough sport for longevity. So having a 20-fight career in the UFC is getting to the point where it's almost unheard of. We're seeing guys that fights are so dangerous that they're not lasting.
Yeah, well, they when I got my last contract, they were usually like 4-fight deals because my manager never wanted to sign long, big deals because if you do good, you can always renegotiate. But if you do good and you're in an 8-fight or 10-fight contract, that was the deal with John Jones. He signed a 10-fight deal, and then he wanted to renegotiate, and they were like, nah. But if he had signed like a 4 or 5-fight deal, he could have been renegotiated for more money, and he wouldn't be having the issues that he's having now. So I always signed 4-fight deals, and I never once got to my 4th fight. I was always renegotiated after the 3rd fight because I did good. But my last fight, I kind of knew that the time was creeping up. So they offered me 4. I said, make it 5. That puts me at 20, and then, I'll dip. And I didn't want to just fight for a check, because I think that happens to a lot of people, and they kind of lose their passion for the game, for the sport, for training and things like that. Because I'm gonna get paid anyways, and that's just a brutal sport to only be fighting for a check and not have your whole heart in it. So, I couldn't have wrote it better. There was one thing I could change. Is my last fight would have been in front of a crowd. I wanted to get on that Austin, Texas card or Houston card maybe like 2 or 3 weeks before I fought in the Apex. But, I can't be mad about it. They let me put my son in the corner. I went out there, got a win over a guy who's got like 27 fights or something like that in the UFC. So,
had you trained with him before, right?
Yeah, I trained with Brad a couple times. I used to travel a bunch to go train just to, work with different partners, higher level partners, different gyms, different, states, countries, and whatnot like that. Because I wanted to take it all in. I knew I was behind the 8 ball getting started at 24 when, like you said, these guys have been doing this, since they were, in diapers. And so I was just trying, like you said, drink from a fire hose and go get all the experience I could. So, Extreme Couture, they're definitely not short on bodies and talent and coaching. So, I go out there quite often to, go train and get my skills up. And he was always one of the guys that I trained with.
So you had a smaller gym in Birmingham. It's not the biggest place in the world. You had 2 UFC fighters come out of that same gym, you and Walt. What were your coaches doing? What was it like? How did they get you guys in without all these bodies, without all these training partners, and they still guided you into the UFC?
Well, there's been like 5 fighters come out of there. Marcus Brimage, John Salter, me, Walt, and there's one other person I can't remember off the top of my head.
Countless regional champions too. A lot of regional guys.
Oh yeah. Our coach Chris Conley, man, he just really knows the game and knows how to coach, knows how to train. He's been around a bunch in a long time as well. So anybody who wants to fight MMA and make it to the top, that's the spot that they go to.
I notice when I look at your career and I look at your matchups, a lot of your fights are short notice. You're replacing somebody. In order to do that, you've got to stay training, you've got to stay in shape. And I think a lot of guys, once they take a fight, they like to take some time off because training camp is so difficult. But it looks like maybe you just kind of stay in camp and you stay ready all the time. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, after a fight, depending how it went, some fights, like after I knocked out Rafael Natal, I was back in the gym on Monday training. After I beat Marcus Perez, I was back training. After I beat, whoever, if I wasn't beat up or banged up, I'm back in the gym training. But I thoroughly love training. The gym is kind of like my temple, if you will. All my outside problems, social issues, if I ever had money issues, issues with my kid or whatever, what was happening in life, it didn't exist when I was training. So I just kind of like, that's kind of like where I'd run from life, is the gym. So I found refuge from life in the gym. So I just, trained as much and as often as I could. And it was really good for, like your mental state. And like I said, dude, I can't say it enough. Like, I really love training.
No matter how much stress I'm under, if you get out to the gym and you're basically folding clothes with somebody still inside of them, there's a sense of just appreciation for everything you have, especially when you get exhausted, when you get tired, when you get submitted, you realize that things aren't that bad. You'll be okay. And so what do you say to that guy that's looking at your gym and thinking, I don't want to be a fighter. That's not who I am. What do you tell that guy to get him to come into your gym and start training?
Yeah, well, one, like, I don't like fighters as fighters. They're like selfish. Everything is about them. And that's kind of how it has to be when you're a fighter. But I just don't want to manage a bunch of different personalities and chase people down. Why aren't you training? I want somebody like me to walk in the gym, and people with my love for the game. There's just not a whole lot of people like that. So, I'd rather coach, the accountant, the doctor, the soccer mom, somebody who just wants to come in there and learn a skill, train, work out, feel good about themselves, and things like that. Those are the people that I enjoy training because they truly appreciate it. And, maybe they're like me, maybe like, their work life sucks, or they're going through a divorce, or, whatever life has for them. Doing kickboxing and jiu-jitsu is a great way to relieve stress and, forget about all those things for just that hour or two a day. And they're just so appreciative. They love it. They show up every day pretty consistently and train their ass off. So
I think what most people find is it is a challenge, and it's a new challenge. It's something they've never experienced before. We've all gone to the gym, we've worked out, and it gets boring and you quit. But it's not boring when you go to a jiu-jitsu gym and you're rolling around and you're training and you're learning new moves every time. And then you get to apply those moves. And it gives you a sense of confidence knowing when you're walking around with your family and you're walking around with your kids somewhere, knowing that I'm not going to gas out in 10 seconds if somebody tries to rob me or mess with my family. Like I can roll for 5 rounds of 5 minutes apiece and I'm okay. So it really teaches you that you can survive.
And also, there's a culture here at this gym where everybody is kind of like for each other. Like, there's not very many selfish people who train here. So that also makes, like, if John doesn't show up to the gym, then Matt doesn't have a training partner. So John's going to show up for Matt, and Matt's going to show up for John, and they're going to train together. And then everybody else, kind of trains together as well. So I think that I've done a good job, and that we've done a good job in this gym of building, like, a community. So everybody wants to show up to train for the other person, not even necessarily just themselves.
I think, I've heard Master Laborio talk, and I've been under him for a long time, and he's one of the greatest martial artists I've ever known. And his thing is like, look, only about 3% of people that come into a gym actually compete. 97% of people don't. Are you going to cater
Right.
to the 3% or are you going to cater to the 97%? Because if you cater to the 3, the 90 leave. They don't want to be
Right.
around there because, like you said, that selfish guy is going to come in and he's going to choke out that 42-year-old, executive that's just coming in to work out. And that guy's going to say, well, this sucks. I'm not coming in
Yeah.
to work with a black eye. I'm not doing this crap anymore. But if you check the ego at the door, which you've been doing forever, and you instill that in the people that come to your gym, you're going to make it a very welcoming spot. Where exactly is your gym located?
It's in Vestavia Hills, Alabama, a little suburb just outside of Birmingham.
And what kind of classes do you offer?
Mostly boxing and kickboxing. We do have kids as well. And to be honest, if I had fighters, it would be like the kids who stay in the program and eventually say, hey, I've been training for whatever, 5
So I
years. I think I want to fight. So those are the guys that I would coach fighting. But if someone just walked in off the street talking about I want to fight, I'm gonna point them in another direction.
go to Conley's gym.
Yeah. He's
So
got plenty
I
of
have
those
a
guys.
question for you from Seth. His question is, what was more dangerous, football or fighting, and why?
Well, I played football before CTE was a thing, so there was no concussion protocol. There was no any of that. It was just like, don't be a pussy, And then you also want to be dependable. You want your teammates to be able to depend on you. So even though you're hurt, banged up, you're seeing double or whatever, you're still going to go back out there the next series or the next play and keep playing. So now I think football is probably a little bit safer because even if you're like a little dizzy or like there's a big hit, they're going to go check on you. So I think back then football was more dangerous. MMA, okay, you get knocked out in a fight and then you don't do anything for, a month afterwards or, a few weeks until the symptoms go away or whatever. So I think you have like time to rest after a fight or after a hard sparring session or whatever. Football, you really don't have that luxury. You have to go to the next series and you play the next week. And then during that week, you have to hit and do all those things. So for sure, 100%, when I played, football was more dangerous. And that's just talking about like, head injuries, but now I think now people like train smarter too. It's like, hey, maybe you need to take a week off. That was a pretty like rough sparring session, and or that was a hard fight, dude. You need to relax. So I guess it depends how you train, where you train. They're both pretty brutal on the sports, and my dumbass picked the two hardest sports on planet Earth to do back to back. So I don't think I have any like concussion issues or CTE effects or whatever yet. We'll see what the future holds, but I still think I'm pretty sharp, and I don't slur my words or anything like that. So I think I'm good to go.
Well, you're a business owner. You've had a long career. What's the advice you'd give to anybody wanting to start MMA? What's the one piece of advice that you would give them?
Be all in. I understand like when you first start fighting, you're going to fight for free. You're not going to make any money, so you have to work a job or whatever. But whenever I first started fighting, I would work whatever job I had. I would get up in the morning, go train, go to work, and then not even go home, go straight back to the gym. And I trained as much and as often as possible. And I would get home, my kids would already be asleep, so I missed out on a lot of family time. But a lot of these fighters, they don't have kids and wives and things like that yet. So there's really nothing keeping them from training other than, I don't know if laziness is the word, but like maybe discipline or whatever. Like if you don't want it all the way, then don't do it. Just train.
I will tell you that, growing up in Southern California, I was a huge USC fan, so I hated Alabama. And then I met Eryk Anders, and I had to deal with you for a couple fights, getting things done. And I remember specifically calling you and saying, "Hey, I need this." And you said, "I get off work at 5. I'll call you at 5:01." And 5:01, my phone would ring and I would get a call and I would tell you what I would need and I would have it the very next day. Uh, so I started thinking like, Jesus, he's Alabama. This guy from Alabama, like he's like nobody else. He's so professional, so on top of it. And I think that led to you being where you are and being liked by the matchmakers in the UFC so much because when they asked you to do something, you did it. I see it all the time with fighters. I need your corner list. I need your flight information. I need your medicals. And they don't get it to you. They get it to you at the last second. I'm having to get extensions from athletic commissions because they're not getting stuff done. You also had a great manager, Jason House, one of the best managers in the business that probably helped square you away as well. But I want to give that advice to people too. If you're going to be in this business, be a man of your word. And when you say you're going to do something, do it because that's what you did. And this is where it elevated your career to where you are. And I want to tell you thank you as a promoter how it's been working with you because you made my life easy, especially even with CFFC BJJ. Hey, I got to match Chris Dawkins. Okay. I was like, hold on. He's a heavyweight. Are you okay with that? Yeah, I don't care. Just tell me what day I need to be there, what time weigh-ins are. You would be the first one to weigh-ins. You would be the last one to leave. It's an unbelievable attitude that I guess you just can't teach.
I think a lot of people say they want to be a fighter, but they really don't want to be a fighter, and that's why they put those things off. I wanted to be a fighter. I wanted to fight. So it's like, okay, I know I need my blood work. I know I need this, and this. So I would knock that out like as soon as possible so I wouldn't have to worry about it the rest of the time. A lot of these people, they don't really do that, and then it's almost like they're looking for a way out. It's like, oh, I can't fight. I didn't have my blood work. Shucks. Or I didn't do this or do that, or oh, I didn't make weight. Now they won't take the fight because I'm overweight or whatever.
Yeah, it's a big one. Oh, I didn't make weight. I guess the fight's off. There's a lot of that stuff, and it's really stressful on us as a promoter when we're putting shows on and we're counting on you to be paid to do something and you don't meet your contractual obligations. It sucks. Well, I know you've got to go. You've got a class at 4:00. You're still on the mats training and working with these kids. So we appreciate you taking the time to be with us. Make sure you give Eryk a follow on social media. He's a great guy to follow with a lot of advice and a lot of cool things that he's posting. If you're in the Birmingham area and you're looking for a gym to get your kids into, I cannot recommend his gym enough. He travels around and sometimes does seminars, so catch him if you can. And we appreciate having you, Eryk, and we'll catch you on the other side.
Hey, I appreciate it, brother. Anytime.
Thanks, brother. Well, there you go. Eryk Anders, the UFC 20 fight veteran. You got to hear kind of what his story was about football and coaching and everything else. He's just been a phenomenal guy to work for in this business. I was very happy and excited to have him on the show, episode number 2. But remember, next week, we will have Shane Sparks. I should say at the end of this week, this Friday, the 22nd, back to 2 p.m. Central Time. Shane Sparks, broadcasting wizard, one of the most exciting, invested broadcasters you will hear on TV today on the Big Ten Network, ESPN, Flow Sports. The guy is everywhere. Really, really promoting the sport of wrestling, but also branching out even to some other sports that he can get into. I had the opportunity to hang out with him quite a bit during CFFC Match Day. He did it. He loved it. He was such a valuable part of the events and the shows. He made it all worth it. He has a lot of knowledge in broadcasting, commentating, and what it takes to be at that level and have that energy that he does. So we're definitely looking forward to seeing him later this week. Make sure you catch it live. We are back 2 p.m. Central Time later this week. Friday, we've got another guest lined up next week. And then also next Friday is the Thrill on the Hill at Liberty Hill, CFFC on UFC Fight Pass. Until then, thank you guys for joining.